Olix Network 18, Mission Poshan, Bhavishya Roshan.
Right, so those are the headlines at this hour. This is a show where our team at CNBC TV 18 gets you the top stories of the day. I'm Arif Sherwani and you're watching Reporter's Diary. Right, but first up, let's take a look at the market. So it was the third straight day of losses on Dalal Street, with the Nifty giving up the 10,600 mark. The Sensex also losing more than 100 points to give up the 35,000 level. Mid-caps continued to underperform, and that index saw almost 1.3% shaved off from yesterday's close. But bank stocks fared marginally better than the benchmark indices, ending flat in trade. This is the worst earnings recession in India's history. That comment coming in from Morgan Stanley's Ridham Desai. He believes foreign investors are disappointed with India and are pulling out. However, he does remain bullish on the India story, with a 36,000 target for the Sensex by June 2019. But while reiterating that target, he also admits that it could go terribly wrong.
We've been in a deep earnings recession. This has been the worst earnings recession in India's history. I feel now we have kind of come to a bottom. Revenue growth has been accelerating for the past 6 quarters. Even for this quarter, the revenue growth for various cuts of the market is somewhere between 12 and 15%. So that's a very robust revenue growth. What's not happened as yet is that margins have not recovered. Bulk of this pressure is in the corporate banks. So if you X out the corporate banks, then I think earnings have actually inflected already in the upward direction. On a 12-month basis, rolling basis, the Sensex on an average does about a 40% swing. We haven't had that since 2014. The Sensex has been a very well-behaved person and has not been oscillating as it usually does. So could this be the year in which it does that oscillation? I think it's possible. And we could get that bit of oscillation. So yeah, you point out my forecast of 36, which I said sometime during the show. That I think is going to go terribly wrong. So keep that in mind.
Right, so that optimistic 36,000 mark on the Sensex looks a little difficult, according to Ridham Desai. But today is the second day of the 3-day monetary policy meet at the RBI. This time around, a rate hike decision has become a probability from a possibility, courtesy higher headline and retail inflation. On the other hand, the lack of clarity on the minimum support mechanism and fiscal risks may force the Urjit Patel-led committee to stick to a status quo. So the question, will they, won't they, holds more ground this time round. Ritu Singh is here with the details of the CNBC TV 18 poll. Ritu.
If you look at some of the factors that actually shape RBI's policy, simply put in poker terms, it's all in. I mean, a sharp increase in global oil prices has hit the Indian economy hard, and the rupee along with it, which, remember, was the best performing Asian currency last year and now is one of the worst. The robust growth data that came in the fourth quarter has also caused some to see a rate hike coming sooner than later for the repo rate. But here's the big one. The key concern which the central bank has, for which it has kept the repo rate at 6% for a very long time, is the inflation rate, which is also widely expected to climb further from here. So the consensus is that the Reserve Bank will hike interest rates for the first time since January 2014. But the big question is whether it will happen in this policy or sometime later this year. Now, a CNBC TV 18 poll says that 90% are actually expecting a status quo in this policy and only 10% are anticipating any sort of a hike. But all our respondents are very clear that there will be a rate hike in this calendar year. 80% say that there could be 125 basis point hike, and 20% say that there could actually be a 50 basis point hike between now and December. The majority is also expecting a status quo as far as the statutory liquidity ratio is concerned, so no change on that front in this policy. On the macro parameters, however, all respondents expect RBI to keep the GDP forecast unchanged at 7.4%, the figure they gave last time around. On the inflation front, majority expect the CPI projection of 4.7 to 5.1% for the first half to largely be left unchanged. But in the second half, the respondents are divided, where 50% do expect the RBI to raise that forecast from 4.4% currently. So while the RBI is expected to stay on repo rates this time, it is also expected to shift its stance from neutral little too hawkish. Why? Because they will acknowledge the risks to inflation that is now, much higher than RBI's target of 4%. But do remember, in the last MPC minutes, it was revealed that the tone of the policy itself was very hawkish, and that is expected to be this time around. And the highlight as well was RBI Deputy Governor Veeral Acharya, who made it very clear that in all probability his next vote would be for a rate hike.
Right, so those are the results thrown up by the CNBC TV 18 monetary policy poll. Many thanks, Ritu, for joining us with all the details from there. But escalating trade tensions and rising interest rates are the key risk to the global economy at the moment. That's the word coming in from former RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan. Speaking to CNBC's Oriel Morrison, Rajan issued a warning over the ongoing trade tussle between the United States and other countries, saying things can get out of control very quickly.
Well, I think at this point, the biggest risk is the combination of rising interest rates and some untoward action on trade. I think it's the perception that with all the leverage that's out there, interest rates rising are already an issue that we'll have to deal with, but that's out there. The great uncertainty is what happens with trade. If we have a trade conflagration in the next few months, that could really hamper the global economy.
Do you think that's likely? I mean, you've said before, and you have been vocal about it, that a win-win situation is actually possible. As we move through this, not purely rhetoric anymore, between especially China and the US, do you see the chances for a win-win resolution actually increasing or decreasing?
Well, the key question is whether these bargaining ploys, threats of levying tariffs, etc., result in real negotiation, which create that win-win situation, or do players get locked into positions which mean they eventually have to carry out their threats, in which case we are in a lose-lose situation. The problem to some extent at this point is that people have put forward their offers in some sense, and we have to see if they actually reach a negotiation point where they can back down. Some of these situations can get out of control very quickly.
The other point that you mentioned, which I'd like to take you up on, is that of interest rates. I think it's something we're specifically focused on when it comes to what's happening with the US economy right now. What is your, I suppose, prediction, first of all, for what we're going to see in terms of rates in the US, and what do you actually think needs to happen there?
Well, I think that the latest news suggests the U.S. economy is actually strengthening, is doing better, is actually doing quite well for an economy in its 92nd year of job creation. So my sense is the Federal Reserve is on a raising path, which it's not going to step off until it feels it's much closer to neutral. And I think most people would say neutral is between 2.75% and 3% at the short end. That means we're probably looking at 3 rate hikes this year, unless something really untoward happens in Europe or in some of the big emerging markets to create global turmoil. But it has to be really bad, in my view, for the Fed to step off this rate rising path. Otherwise, I think they're going to wait, do what they have to do, and then look around to see if they've done enough or they need to do more.
Onto a CNBC TV 18 exclusive from the e-commerce space. A few weeks after Walmart brought a strategic sale in Flipkart, Amazon has decided to power up its Indian arm as well. We learned from sources that Amazon is looking to raise its India investment from $5 billion to $7 billion. Kritika Saxena broke that story. She joins us now with all the details. Kritika, what more can you tell us?
Well, let me put this into perspective first. If you look at the investment plan that Amazon has made in India, in 2014, they first announced a $2 billion investment in the country. After that, they increased that by $3 billion in 2016 to $5 billion. So the current amount that we know from Amazon side is last reported 2016 figure of $5 billion. We now understand that with Flipkart and Walmart now inking their $16 billion plus deal in India, Amazon is not going to be left behind. expect Amazon to bet big, and we learn that they are likely to increase that investment from $5 billion to $7 billion. So that's an increase of almost $2 billion into the Indian market. And what my sources are telling me at this point in time is that it's just an initial figure. We are likely to see Amazon increase that over a period of time. There's no timeline that they have set for themselves, but expect Amazon to start ramping up this investment very soon. And official announcement is unlikely, but this is an internal memo, an internal strategy that has been disclosed to only the senior management. And what we understand from our sources that a bulk of this is going to come into the e-commerce story, that is Amazon Seller Services. While some portions may come into Prime and other services, it's largely going to be the e-commerce service. So yes, get prepared for the big e-commerce wars. When we contacted Amazon for a comment, they said that they can't comment on rumors and speculation.
Right, Kritika. Many thanks for joining us with all the details from there. But an SBI-led consortium of bankers has shortlisted 11 power plants for acquisition by new owners under the Samadhan scheme. That's the name given to SBI's scheme of asset management and debt chain structure. The power plants include Lanco Infratech's Anpara project in Uttar Pradesh and JP Power Ventures' Nigri project in Madhya Pradesh. Other projects under Samadhan belong to Jindal India Thermal Power, KSK, as well as IND Bharat Power. The RBI stressed asset regulations require that resolutions be reached in 180 days, after which the assets will face liquidation. So if this Samadhan scheme fails to attract buyers for these 11 plants that have been shortlisted, they may go into liquidation in September. In fact, let's hear out the Power Minister for more details on that.
You know, the SBI scheme is called Samadhan. So they are addressing those assets which are complete or near complete. And the idea is to carry out an assessment as to what will be the sustainable debt for these assets. Then the remaining debt, which is unsustainable, will be converted into equity, which will be held by the banks, the lender banks. About 24% will be allowed to remain with the promoters. And then the banks will bid out this equity to people who want to run these plants. The idea is that these plants will be run, and the idea is that the valuation which is achieved would be somewhere near their true valuation. That's the objective which we have.
And shifting focus to the other story that we're tracking this hour, the five-star Shangri-La Hotel in downtown Singapore is widely expected to host the upcoming summit between American President Donald Trump and North Korean ruler Kim Jong-un on the 12th of June. And not just other leading nations of the world, but India too is keeping a close watch on the much-wanted meeting. Sources telling CNBC TV 18 that India hopes that the summit can provide a route to ease tensions in the Korean peninsula. Remember, last month, the Minister of State for External Affairs, V.K. Singh, had visited the North Korean capital, Pyongyang, in what was India's highest level of engagement with the hermit nation in 2 decades. So what transpired during that meeting? Parikshit Luthra is here with all the details. Parikshit, what are you picking up?
Well, top source in the government telling us that General V.K. Singh conveyed to the Vice President of North Korea that India feels very strongly about proliferation of weapons technology to countries like Pakistan. So this was something that was strongly taken up. North Korea noted that, yes, indeed, at different forums, India has been making this very point, and they made it very clear, and they also assured India and General V.K. Singh that there would be no proliferation of nuclear technology to anyone who could hinder India's interests in the future. There would be no proliferation to anyone for that matter, be it Pakistan or any other country. Having said that, Indian government sources telling us that they are hopeful that somehow this summit meeting between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un in Singapore would actually open the route, give an escape route to all the tensions that have been building up in the Korean peninsula. But they're also not counting on it too much. They're not betting on it because there have been flip-flops as far as North Korea and the US relationship is concerned. We've seen the summit go on and off. So they're holding their cards close to their chests. Not too many comments coming from the Indian government at this point. They're cautious, but at the same time, they're welcoming this summit, hoping that it would ease tensions for the global community. Back to you.
To the latest in the Aircel Maxis case, former Finance Minister and Congress leader P. Chidambaram is being questioned by the Enforcement Directorate since morning. He has been granted interim protection from arrest by the ED till the 10th of July, though. We have Timsy Jaipuria joining us with more details from there. Timsy, you have been monitoring the activity from outside the ED office. What are you gathering?
Yes, that's right. I've been here since morning. Around 11 o'clock is when P. Chidambaram came here for questioning. He left around 1:30 or so for lunch. But till then, in the first set of questioning, ED did question him about his role in the Aircel Maxis case, why he granted permission to Aircel Maxis case at the SIPB, the alleged behavior of what exactly P. Chidambaram is being alleged by ED is on the fact that he gave permission to the deal illegally under the rules of FIPB, being the chair of FIPB. Already, remember, the questioning is underway. He is expected to be here till evening at least. It could be late evening as well. And yes, already his son, Karti Chidambaram, has been questioned twice in the same case. But now it's the turn of P. Chidambaram. Let's see what actually happens when he leaves for the day from ED office. Back to you.
Right. Many thanks, Timsy, for joining us with all the details from there. We'll be in touch with Timsy to see what transpires after that round of questioning is over. But sources telling CNBC TV 18 that the Thane crime branch today found fake cryptocurrency worth 500 crore rupees. That fraud was allegedly launched after the accused launched an ICU, which is an unregulated way of raising funds for a new cryptocurrency venture. Utkarsh Chaturvedi joins us with all the details from there. Utkarsh, how does the scam become possible?
So, Ari, what happened in this case is, as you rightly said, this is a fake cryptocurrency case. So, three people really went ahead and launched a fake cryptocurrency. They came out with an ICO, an initial coin offer. This is like an IPO for cryptocurrencies, where you come out with a cryptocurrency and then you launch an ICO. But this is an unregulated way, at least in India. You cannot really go ahead and do that. This is normally done by startups abroad. What happened then is that the level of that cryptocurrency went from $3, which was launched back then, to a level of $2,000. Now, what we came to know from our sources in the Thane crime branch is that the software was designed such that you can actually put in money to buy those cryptocurrencies, but you cannot really sell those cryptocurrencies anywhere. And that is when people realized this thing. They lost a lot of money, and around 500 crore rupees has been duped in this case. What we are picking up is that out of the three accused, the two of the accused are absconding at this point of time, and Thane police is really trying to seize all the assets possible of the people who are absconding.
Right, Utkarsh. Many thanks for joining us with all the details from there. So there you have it, a 500 crore fake cryptocurrency scam taking place there. But staying with that cryptocurrency space, the Enforcement Directorate has summoned Raj Kundra in connection with an alleged Bitcoin scam. The ED is questioning Mr. Kundra today. However, it's not clear whether he was duped as an investor or he's part of the alleged fraud. So once that questioning is over, more clarity will emerge. But moving on from there, India must take up trade deficit concerns squarely with the Chinese. That's the word coming in from former Secretary East of the Ministry of External Affairs. While speaking to CNBC TV 18's Parikshit Luthra, he added that he expects the export of commodities such as diamond, cotton and copper from India to China to grow from here on.
Certainly, I mean, this is a concern. It's been a rising concern over the last few years. Chinese trade deficits have been rising with many countries. If you look around the world, you'll find most of their major trading partners are facing a similar situation. The US is a case in point as well. Of course, as far as we are concerned, if we export about 1/6 of what we import, then that becomes a major concern to a country like India. In a phase in which we are trying to concentrate on Make in India, in a phase in which need to consolidate and make sure that our economy moves ahead, it's important that we address these concerns and take them up very squarely with the Chinese.
Has the response been right so far, sir? Positive so far?
Well, I think the last round of bilaterals which we had with the Chinese, these concerns were put forth in a very candid manner. There has been some amount of progress, although if you look at the joint statements by the two sides, it really doesn't seem that the two sides are talking about similar issues. But at the same time, there have been some change, for example, in our exports in key commodities like diamonds, like copper, for instance. Cotton will receive a shot in the arm because cotton imports from of the Chinese imports from USA are going down. So therefore, India offers an alternative. But most importantly, I think is the pharmaceutical sector, where generic drugs from India have not been able to make much headway into the Chinese market, mainly because of protectionism. And that issue has been squarely taken up, as you know.
Do you feel there needs to be a greater push from the Indian side to somehow address this trade deficit?
Yes, of course, there has been a greater push, greater realization, and I think in India everyone realizes the need to bridge this deficit as much as possible.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Reporter's Diary. Coming up next, Ridham Desai of Morgan Stanley India believes that the fourth quarter saw the worst earnings recession in India's history. He believes foreign investors are disappointed with India and are pulling out. However, he does remain bullish on the India story with a 36,000 target for Sensex by June 2019. An exclusive conversation from the sidelines of the Morgan Stanley Investor Summit coming up next.